All right, welcome to another great episode of the Gamepad Saga podcast. Hey, sir, are you okay over there? Are you okay?
I just got over COVID, so I'm good.
Well, glad that you're feeling better. Today's episode, make sure I get my R's in there. We are going to talk about the Sega Saturn and the Sega Dreamcast.
Great systems. Great systems.
Yes, I would agree. Did you own any of them in their original run, I guess, or whenever they were
So we owned when Mom and Dad first started seeing each other. We owned the Sega Genesis over at 900.
Right.
We had the Sega Genesis. We had the Super Nintendo. We did not have a Saturn, however. You had the Saturn. Yeah, that we talked about in our podcast with fighting games, and we'll touch a little bit more on that, I'm sure. But no, the Sega Genesis was the only one that we had. But I feel we need to start with the Sega Genesis first, because I feel
start there.
That leads up to the Saturn and the Dreamcast.
Right. Also, at one point, the Sega Genesis did go by Mega Drive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can go ahead and start with the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, the Sega Genesis was, well, I guess I'll go into that for a little bit and give it a little synopsis on this. So the Sega Genesis was by far superior than the NES and Super Nintendo at one point. Now, the Super Nintendo, now don't get me wrong, the Nintendo itself made home consoles popular once again. Because, you know, you had the Atari and ColecoVision and all the rest of that good stuff. And, you know, they were good for the time, right? But they lacked a lot. They were very limited. And as opposed to you having now a game system that can play multiple games, can give you really good graphics, good visuals, good gameplay. You know, you had Nintendo at that time, where I believe Nintendo kind of started adopting some of the arcade stuff, right?
Right, yes.
And, you know, now you're able to play the arcade games at home, but they weren't the greatest because of, you know, the boards and whatnot. Super Nintendo, kind of the same thing. Super Nintendo kind of like revolutionized everything a little bit. But when Sega Genesis came, Sega was like, basically, we are going to blow everybody out the water when it comes to arcade ports. And they did. They did a really good job. Like, you look at some of the Ninja Turtles games that came out on arcade that was at Sega Genesis. You look at Streets of Rage. You look at all those beat 'em ups. Pretty much that's what the arcade was. Beat 'em ups and 1v1 fighters and shoot 'em ups. Like Gradius and all the rest of the good stuff. Or Super R type, those type games. Sega Genesis was just founded on making sure the arcade port is not perfect, but good enough to where when it's here, it's like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm not missing out on the arcade.
Right.
I'm not. And
buy our home console instead of going to the arcade to play.
Right. And they did a really good job. Although, let's be real, the arcade is always going to be the real deal. It's always going to be the real deal. Much more powerful. Obviously, you'll have to pay money to play it. But, you know, that's the thing.
Battle Pass.
Yeah, Battle Pass. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Obama. I appreciate the Battle Pass. That was a good one. But yeah, they specialize and they did really well with the arcade ports. And more with the Sega Genesis, they also started getting a lot of exclusive, like the Batman games were exclusive.
Really?
Or somewhat. Yeah. Batman games were getting exclusivity for it. Actually, you know what? Let me take that back. Because I know there was some Batman games on Super Nintendo, but I think it was Batman the movie that was exclusive for Sega Genesis. Okay. And then a lot of these companies started to see the steam that Sega was getting. And then not only that, they were also not cool with the licensing fees that Nintendo was giving out between the NES and the Super Nintendo. So they were like, nah, we're just jumping ship. We're just going to go ahead and put everything on all platforms.
Right.
And the Sega Genesis really stepped up in making the games, I wouldn't say slightly better, but significantly better. Like the Sega Genesis at one point was on top of the world. Yes. And then you had Sonic, which was the mascot of it all. Right. So like you had someone who was outbeating Mario And Mario had been out for years.
Yeah. Well, we go back mid-80s.
Yeah, but early to mid 80s, early, like 84.
Yeah.
Around when you were born, somewhere around there. Like 80, 82, 84, somewhere around there. But yeah, the Sega Genesis had a lot going for it until it was around 86, 88 to about 94 was when Sega was like really like having its real like big break, right?
Yes.
So they were pumping out game after game, Vector Man 2, Earthworm Jim, like the list goes on. Especially Vector Man was great.
How was that? I never played Vector Man.
Vector Man, so it was a side scroller, and basically Vector Man had this little like machine gun he had in his hand, and you just like would shoot things. But it was the first like 2D game that was 3D that you could play.
Okay.
That was like that was well made.
Yeah,
it was really good. Sega was also good for their sports. Once Madden started coming from Super Nintendo over to Sega Genesis, Sega had its own sports line. Like these games were pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty decent. A lot of people were liking them. Especially out in the West here. Basketball and football were huge things.
Yes.
I mean, they're still huge. I think money-wise, they're huge now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's much of a following as it was back in the day. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Because like you look at Madden now, you look at NBA 2K now, right? You get the same people buying them every year. Mm-hmm. I'm one of them, right? But I'm also the same person that's like, these games suck.
Right.
Like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Instead of just me not buying it.
It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, I'm dumb.
I remember, what was it? 2K, was it 21 or 22? And they had the game for like $3. I was like, damn, that's a steal.
It is a steal. It is.
Even with having to buy your pay to win to upgrade your creative player,
mm-hmm.
It was still worth it.
It's a fun game when your character's great,
mm-hmm.
and you can throw up some circus ass shots and make it. Right?
Yes.
But we're not going to get into that right now because I'm going to have a fit if that's the case.
All right, we'll stay on track. So we're still talking about Sega.
Yeah, so the sports line
Sega
for
Genesis,
Sega was top tier when it came to sports, whether it be on any system. I think it was called Sega Sports. Yeah, it was Sega Sports, and that was the tagline that they used for their games. And they came out with football, basketball, soccer. They came out with FIFA at one point. So they were the king of FIFA at one point. They had golf. I think they came out with one for Sega Saturn. Actually, it was called the Pebble Beach Golf Tour or something like that.
Actually, I do have one. Yeah, it was a release title. They probably could have released more, but one of the release titles for the Saturn was Pebble Beach Golf Links.
Yeah, and then they had FIFA Golden Goal Edition or something like that. I'm not necessarily sure, but
Worldwide Soccer.
Yeah, Worldwide
Sega International Victory Goal Edition.
Yes. Goal. So Sega was there. Sega pretty much had everything in the palm of their hands until we're still on the Genesis. Okay. So you do know that there was two different corporations for Sega, right?
As far as North America and Japan, yeah.
So Japan was now trying to figure out, what are we going to do for the Mega Drive? What is the next best thing, which was going to be the Saturn at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And they left America. And yes, I know we live in America, and let's be real here. We're not all perfect, okay? We're not all perfect. They left Sega of America to publish games.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it all went downhill, because they put out mediocre to terrible games by then. So with both Sega of America and Sega of Japan working together to make great content, they did, because they had that run from 86 to 94.
Right.
Anything after that was just, it was downhill.
Yeah,
it was downhill.
I don't say disappeared, but Well, then you had the rise
They-
of
they might-
PlayStation, but
Yeah, but I mean, that's the other thing. That's gonna tie into what we're
Yeah.
talking about with the rise of PlayStation. But I think if they were to, if Japan and Sega of America were to work on that specific system together, which would be the Sega Saturn, and I believe that was the system that they had issues with the chipset. I believe
so,
that
yeah.
was, and we'll get in that in a minute. Near the end of its life cycle, games were not what they were coming
Mhm.
in. That reign of terror they had over the gaming community and the gaming world just completely shattered.
Mhm.
And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. There's a formula.
Right.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. And the gentleman, the CEO at the time for Sega of America, I don't remember his name. I think it was like Tom McClinsky or something like that. He made some pretty good decisions, but also when it came to the gaming portion of it, he didn't see quality. He saw quantity.
So you just wanted to push games out.
And that's all they did.
Care.
That's all they did was push games out, whether it was good or mediocre.
Right.
There was, or even bad. And there was more mediocre and bad games than there were good games.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the start of the fall for Sega for a home console.
Okay.
This was the start. America sabotaged it.
It's all your fault.
I mean, yeah. I mean, anyone listening, I'm sorry. I don't know. We got hardcore American people here. Hey, I live in America. I love this country too. But I'm okay with admitting when we just didn't do the best, and we didn't do the best on this. We didn't, because I'll tell you what. Today, Sega would have been. Sega would still be a household name today instead of a software company.
Mm-hmm.
We would still have Sega systems in here. So many people have grown up on Sega. So many people, especially in that era, kind of people our age,
right,
more or less, were owning Segas at that time.
Because we were all, between 10, 15, 20 years old.
Yeah. So, I mean, not only that, just again, these are the same people that grew up in arcades.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a whole demographic of people who are now like having kids and then showing their kids these things.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, I'm a Sega fan too. And here you are creating more Sega people. How about that? Well, folks, what do you know? I'm a daddy. So, but yeah, this was the start of it. But now we're going to go to the Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
So Saturn was announced in 94, was it? Or did it come out in 94?
Let's see. Developed and released November 22nd, 94 in Japan. Then in May 11th, 1995, it was released in North America. Then July of 95, it was released in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently the Saturn was released earlier in the US.
Mm-hmm. So it was released first in the US?
No, Japan first.
Okay.
It was successful there.
Mm-hmm.
But for the US, it was supposed to release in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But they moved up the date. So I guess they felt threatened by Nintendo. So they were like, let me put our system out first. So.
No, you want to know why they felt threatened by Nintendo? Because we fucked it up. We fucked it up.
How'd they do that?
All those sorry ass games Sega was putting out. Sorry. I'm still upset about that.
That's okay. We forgive you.
Well, thank you. So my thing is now we moved it up. And what were we worried about then? Well, I'm not going to say we, but I mean, I say we as because it's Sega right now. And that's what we're representing.
Mm-hmm.
What was Sega worried about at that time when it came to Nintendo? Because 94, 95? What came out then? Was it the 64? 64 came out in like 98, right? 97?
The N64 did not come out until late 96.
Late 96. Okay, I do remember that because I remember going to school and people talking about Mario 64. I'm like, oh, I got this many stars. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell y'all talking about. I still got a Sega Genesis at home.
So they released it early because they were scared of what PlayStation was going to do.
PlayStation.
We know what PlayStation did.
PlayStation. Okay, let's get into this now. So, with the Saturn, Sega of Japan and Sega of America, once again, going at it. The internal feud between the two.
Was it a power struggle?
You would think. You would think somebody wanted to piss further than the other person. Somebody wanted to do something. So there was a particular way they wanted to make the Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't know all the specifics when it comes to the chipset. But there was a specific chipset that Japan wanted to do, and there was a specific chipset that America wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
They ultimately went with the one that America wanted. I mean, for reasons, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And performance-wise, not a bad system. Again, Sega was built on bringing over arcade ports home. You don't have to get up and pay quarters all the time, but you got to pay another $60, $70 for a game. That's for sure. And mind you, everyone's getting up on these games that were like, that are now $70 $70 a game.
They were like that years ago.
They were like that years ago. So I mean, we lived it.
We just didn't know because our parents
right
for it.
Right,
and we were like, we didn't know why they were getting so mad.
Right.
Why
So
are you getting mad?
us dealing with in the PS4 and Xbox One and in that era of video games where things were between $40 and $60, and now they're back up to 70. Well, that's why.
Yeah.
All right. It's always been there. I mean, what was it? There was I can't remember what game system it was. Neo Geo. I'm going to just go off topic real quick.
You said the Neo Geo.
Neo Geo. He said the Neo Geo. Neo Geo. You know how much that was when it dropped?
Let me go 500.
$650.
Wow.
$650 when it dropped. And we're complaining about a $500 console that's coming out right now. And it's more powerful than the Neo Geo.
Yeah.
Y'all stop. Stop. Right now. Stop.
Speaking of $399, $399.
So $400. So again, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be much superior than a Neo Geo, but a Neo Geo was $650 as opposed to a $400 console. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. $650, $400.
I mean, I never looked at whatever was contained in a Neo Geo. I think I knew one person who owned one. No, I think it's the same person that also introduced me to the Sega as well. Was Altered Beast on Neo Geo?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
yes, it was.
That's the game that I remember they were playing.
Was it the fighting one or was it the beat 'em up?
It was a beat 'em up.
Okay, yeah, Altered Beast. Altered Beast was on there. Yep, I believe that was the second game too.
Second game. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that Neo Geo. If you wanted to look at arcade perfect or damn near, Neo Geo was it. Neo Geo was it, and the formula was like very close to the arcade cabinets. Well, that's why it was so much money. But you could play so many different games, and there were so many different RAM carts that you could use to expand your RAM to play bigger games.
Other games, yeah.
And we'll actually get to that too, because the Saturn was very big into RAM carts. So yeah, so we're again, I say we as we're representing Sega because that's what we're talking about right now. So we look at it. PlayStation comes out. We get a battle in the chipsets on who was going to be superior. What's going to be superior? America thought this was going to be superior, so it was. So performance wise, anything 2D, amazing. Anything, and I said this in the last podcast when we did the fighting games.
Yeah.
Anything 2D was amazing. Anything that was remotely into the beat 'em up fighting games, shoot 'em up, which is like super R type, adventure RPG, anything that was somewhat polygonal with the RPGs with a mixture of like a 2.5 HD at that. Well, I mean now it would be that, but a 2.5 HD then, damn near perfect. Damn near if you got it from the arcade and you brought it over, it was damn near there. The only difference is the aspect ratio. It was like closer on the home console than it was in the arcade. With all that info that we have now, anything that was fully polygonal, like Panzer Dragon,
yeah,
which was a Dragoon.
Two
Okay.
O's.
So that was a launch title, I believe.
Yes.
Probably one of the best 3D polygonal games that came out at that time. Not only that, but for the console itself. There was a lot of good 3D polygonal games that came out that were amazing. However, when it came to third parties, the ports were not as good. I couldn't tell you why.
Because I know Virtua Fighter suffered from this.
It did.
And that's why they had the remix version that you could get by the end of that year when it was released.
Mm-hmm.
You just let them know.
Yeah. Yeah, I just... When Virtua Fighter 2 came out, it was a much better game, much polished.
Mm-hmm.
Although Virtua Fighter was a really fun game. That was a great game. But yeah, anything that you could think of, the arcade ports or anything for the Saturn, it was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. But then you had PlayStation. PlayStation was known for its polygons. PlayStation was superior in its polygons.
Yes.
Most games were polygons. I think between both PlayStation and Saturn, you had to have a RAM cart in order to play certain 3D fighting games.
Yes.
On the Saturn.
Because I was looking at SimCity actually, and you needed the RAM cart, so it loads SimCity.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a pretty big game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the RAM carts were really... it was a really good addition. Although unfortunately, it was an extra accessory you had to get. But as I had said in the last podcast that we did with the fighting games, the Saturn was it when it came to fighting games. It was it. If you had that RAM cart, it was over with. It was damn near arcade perfect. Damn near. I mean, if you looked at it on a graph, you couldn't. Yeah. You could miss it by a centimeter. That's how good it was. That's how good those carts were. Mm. But then you got PlayStation beating them out on every other aspect, and then you had some biases, or now what they call glazing. Have you heard of this term?
No,
okay. Well, I just got schooled the other day.
Glazing. Huh.
Shout out to the Rocky Mount boys. So these are guys I used to play with. I mean, I still do play games with Rocky. They're from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And one of them has a nephew by the name of Jerry. And Jerry was like, "Hey, Keo, do you know what glazing is?" And I was like, "It's something you do with donuts?"
Right.
That's what it sounds like to me. He said to me, "No, it's like something about being biased about something. You're glazing." So, and then I saw it somewhere. I saw that same thing somewhere in a headline, and I was like, "Oh no, people are just going way too far with this now."
Making things up, yeah.
Right now,
bias.
We all knew
glazing.
what a. And I say this obviously in the terms of the word, but fag, right? That was a bundle of sticks and or a cigarette, and then it turned into something else it shouldn't have turned into, right? We're not gonna be guilty of. I mean, we're not gonna be innocent of this. We called each other that all the time.
Yeah, when it was acceptable.
When it was acceptable, yes. When it was like, oh yeah, you just
times have changed.
Yes, and rightfully so. Like we understand people have feelings and stuff.
Yes,
but yeah, now it's glazing. It's glazing. Like to be biased about something. Glazing is that an Urban Dictionary now? Is all right, so I'm going to say this right now. The next
bias about something.
Yeah. Oh, you're being glazing. You're glazing right now, bro. You're glazing. That's the sentence I got. So, really? Jerry, thank you for this, because now it gives us content on the pod to figure out what this is, and we can actually use it.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, I'm probably gonna hook you up with something. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna find something for you. But yeah, so there was some glazing going on when it came to this process. So one of the biggest things, especially in the fighting game community, was that X-Men vs. Street Fighter. And we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the fighting game podcast. X-Men vs. Street Fighter was originally going to come out on the Saturn and the Saturn only, just because it ran better.
Right.
Not saying that. Not throwing PlayStation out the water, because we played the PlayStation version and it was actually a pretty good port. However, if you were someone that came from the arcade and then played it at home, you would have been very disappointed.
Like, what is this?
Yeah. Like, why is this response time so bad? Are they glazing? What's going on? So you had that RAM cart, that 4 megabyte RAM cart for the Saturn. And that game, again, damn near arcade perfect. I sound like a broken record, but I mean, it's truth. But you want to know what the issue was? The huge issue about it? So I believe it's the arcade version, huh?
Tell me what happened. What was the issue?
So I believe in the arcade version when you did supers, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you did your super arts, and I think it was it that game, and then Street Fighter Alpha or Street Fighter Zero for those that played the Japanese version. When you did supers, I'll give the Street Fighter Zero one. If you did supers in the arcade, it was, you had a blue trail silhouette of your character.
Right.
On PlayStation, it's the same thing. You have a blue trail silhouette of your character. You have like a purplish, bluish hue
Mm-hmm.
for Saturn, and that turned everybody off. It's not a true blue.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not the same.
Yeah.
That little small, like, I guess I wouldn't say assumption, but
I don't say minor because it's probably big for other people.
Yeah.
They were like, it's not blue.
That thing took it out of the fighting game community.
Wow.
That little thing right there. Well, one of them anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, how crazy is that? You have a console was much more superior
mm-hmm.
in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
And then just because of that little thing, somebody who, again, wanted to piss further than somebody else was like, oh, let me come up with this stupid excuse. Yeah. And it really wrecked the Saturn in that genre. Mm-mm-mm. It really did. So then now you got people talking bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
You got very little advertisement on the West. But I mean, obviously it was successful in the East.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you gotta compete with coming out with games, and then over on the other side of the country, or not country, but the world, you got all this negativity. How can you do that? How can companies believe in a system that they can make games for and still make money? Well, EA didn't go with Saturn. They didn't go with the Dreamcast. We'll go with that in a little bit.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So I think EA was on the Saturn at one point. I think Madden 97 came out on the Saturn.
I want to say it did.
And Madden 98, I think. Madden 97 and 98. There wasn't very many sports games until about a year later. I think it was like NFL 97 or something like that. It was a Sega sports game. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It had a basketball game that came out, wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the Pebble Beach Golf, which sold pretty well.
So speaking of Saturn, released 1,144 different games.
That's not bad.
The launch games were Clockwork Knight, Daytona USA, Panzer Dragoon, Pebble Beach Golf Links, Virtual Fighter, and then the Worldwide Soccer Sega International Victory Gold Edition. Like I stated earlier, Sega Saturn was released in 94 in Japan, then 95 in the US, but then they were discontinued in 2000 in Japan and in 98 in the US.
98?
Yeah.
It was only out for 2 years.
We're done. Estimated units sold 9.26 million. But yeah, that's a short lifespan. Holy cow.
For it to sell 9.26 million, that's not bad for 2 years. I mean, is that
all of it?
That's an accumulation, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently only have a lifespan of 6 years from 94 to 2000.
Oh my God, the PlayStation. So the PlayStation, the N64, and then the next year after that would have been the Xbox, the original Xbox.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're telling me that this system, despite let's just take out all the negatives, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just take that out. This system could completely still. I mean, I think the Dreamcast was out at that time too. This system 99. Could 99. Okay, so
only because I know the 9999 thing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then it came out, I think, was it August of that following year?
Yeah, August.
August, and then did it come out the next year? Or no, October. October it came out, and it's something I can't remember.
November, or in Japan. Well, when we get the Dreamcast,
okay, gotcha.
We'll finish up Saturn.
But Saturn could definitely have competed with PlayStation. Could compete with the N64 because the N64 was kind of its own thing.
Yes. Yeah, if it would have came out in its original date, I guess they didn't want a crowded marketplace, but yeah, I believe it would have.
That's crazy. And it's, oh my God. And just to think how again, I mean, I'm not trying to be a Sega fanboy, but I'm just going with facts. Like how much superior in some of those genres that the Saturn was.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? All because of glazing. All because
All
of
because,
glazing.
yes.
What? And then obviously again, just bad marketing. But yeah, so 2 years here.
Mm-hmm.
It came out with very good games, and if you try to collect for a Saturn now, because I got you a Saturn for your birthday last year.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Because I mean, I was like, oh yeah, we don't even know what happened to the last one, so let's get another one.
So when I was younger, not knowing the value of things.
Oh, you fucking sold it, you dirtbag.
No, I didn't sell it. It stopped working on me.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. I think it like stopped loading, and then I didn't know any better, so I just chucked it.
No, sir. Sir. No, sir.
But that was life with the Saturn.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's how it worked. I had no clue about this. I just remember one day it was gone. So here we are.
Yeah, thinking back on it, I wouldn't have done that.
I mean, you got one now, so it doesn't matter.
But yeah, the games, I don't say they're expensive, but
they're expensive. Get out of here.
Well,
depends on which one you're getting.
Oh, well, I was just thinking of a Virtual Fighter, Virtual Cop. I think they're like $30-$40.
I mean, that's quite a bit of money. You know how much chicken you can get with $30? Probably a couple of them. Probably a couple of them.
And then we get that 12-piece.
Yeah, let me get that 12-piece and the 3-4 biscuits. Make sure they're not dry, please.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you can get repros for a good price for sure. About $30-$40 for repros. And even still, if you get like repros of a game that's pretty up there, like Panzer Dragoon, you're still looking at paying $70-$80 for it.
For them, yeah.
Or maybe, okay, so let me take that back. Maybe you're paying like $70-$80 for the actual case, complete in box, all the rest of that good stuff. But if you're looking for a repro, you're probably looking at $50-$60. If that. Maybe even more for the original. But yeah, there are games that I've seen, like again, X-Men vs. Street Fighter. That's like over $100 for the Saturn. It's like over $180.
That's crazy. Holy cow.
What? I mean, it's a good game.
I'll take it back. I did pay $80 for NCAA 14 before.
You did
2 years ago. I finally broke down.
You broke down and did it. Huh?
I had stayed away for like 9 years. Then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I want to play that again.
I mean, it's a good game.
And then as soon as I got it, then reports started coming out. Oh, we're making another college football game.
Yeah. It took them, 4 years to get that done? I mean, I'm glad they did because that game is great. Yeah. The game is phenomenal. First Madden-esque game that I've played in a while that I'm having a great time with.
Glad you enjoy it.
But yeah, the Saturn is still a viable system in my mind. I think, again, I don't think it got its fair shake because of the internal struggles. Right,
and it didn't last long. What was it, 2 years?
2 years. That is insane.
We're done providing the U.S. with this thing.
That is insane.
I'm trying to think if I played any race. Well,
we had Daytona USA, yeah.
And then Virtual Cop, Virtual Fighter. But I didn't really play any, did I? No, there's one game called D that I played.
I remember you were always talking about that, but we never played it. So I remember you were talking about it.
I looked on YouTube, and I guess it's not really a playable game. It's more cutscene based from what I've seen. But it was a weird game.
Well, I mean, was it? Didn't I know was it the Mega Drive or was it the Sega CD? It was Sega CD, which I mean we're regressing a bit, but the Sega CD was the one that did the home motion picture video games where they were like cutscenes, and then there were some things that you would do gameplay wise, and then you go to another cutscene, kind of like similar to playing Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah.
That was actually a knock to Metal Gear Solid 4. that was a comparison, but it was also a knock. Because damn it, that game could have been so much better. I mean, great game though, but that could have been so much better. 9 hours of freaking cutscenes. Get out of here.
It's good background.
It is. It is good. Yeah, it is. It is.
All right. So anything else on the Sega Saturn?
No, other than it didn't get its fair shake, and all the other stuff that's been going on. So we're now falling from grace here. We are falling from the heavens.
So the
And-
Sega Dreamcast. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'm just saying we're falling from the heavens and we're about halfway to Earth.
So this is the final, for now anyway, manufactured console by Sega. The Sega Dreamcast was released in Japan on November 27th, 1998. It came to North America September 9th, 1999. Like I said, I always remember the 9999
Yep.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was like everywhere you went. And
I
then
do remember that, yeah.
then in Europe, it was released October 14th of 1999. The release or the launch titles for the Dreamcast
Sonic Adventure, baby.
were Soul Calibur,
Yep. So
Power Stone,
Power Stone was good too.
Mortal Kombat Gold,
Mortal Kombat Gold, okay.
Sonic Adventure, Expendable, Blue Stinger, Trick Style, Hydro Thunder, Tokyo Extreme Racer.
Okay, that was your jam.
Yes, Sega Sports Flag to Flag, Monaco Grand Prix, Pin Trilcelion. What
is it?
Trilcelion.
I think you're right.
Then we have TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat,
Okay.
House of the Dead 2,
Mm-hmm.
Air Force Delta, Arrow Wings, Sega Sports, NFL 2K,
Yes.
NFL Blitz 2000, and then Ready to Rumble Boxing.
All those, there's a lot of them in there are pretty solid ones.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them in there are pretty solid. I had a lot of time with you playing Ready to Rumble and Sonic Adventure.
Do we have Sonic Adventure?
Yeah, we did. We did.
Did we?
We acquired it through means that we shouldn't have, but we did.
I remember Ready to Rumble, but I don't think we got that till like way later.
Way later. Yeah, way later.
Did we ever get NFL 2? We had to, because I'm sure Dad would have picked it up.
We rented Blitz. You talking about Blitz or 2K?
2K.
Yeah, Dad, that was the first game we got was
NFL 2K.
NFL 2K, yep.
Okay.
NFL 2K and NBA 2K.
Okay.
Because I don't think NBA came out at the same time, but I know shortly after we got NBA as well. But yeah, I remember Dad came out. I remember that. He came home with it. And he was like, I got something. And I'm like, oh, what's this? And then you go, oh, it's a new game system. I'm putting it in my room. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's in his room now.
Oh my God. Really?
We had the 64, so it was all good. It was all good. We had the 64. We had some pretty good bangers on that one.
You know, as much as I give Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong crap, Diddy Kong Racer was fun.
Oh my gentle Jesus. Like, yes. Diddy Kong Racing, the soundtrack alone in that game was amazing. I'm like, yo, like, I mean, and again, I'm getting a little off topic, but I'm going to do this anyway. So, like, when you did the adventure thing, like, you had this whole world that you drove in and all the rest, like, kind of very similar to the hub for Mario 64.
Okay.
Yeah, very similar to the hub. Remember, you had to like drive to certain places and stuff like that. And if you had this many like coins or something, you can go into that area.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had to race and beat some dinosaur bad guy or something like that. If that was it, I don't know. But yeah, that game was ahead of its gosh darn time for sure. That was a good game. Tim Bear, that's who I picked. The Tiger. I liked him. That was my boy.
I don't know who I picked. Either it was
I think
Diddy
you picked Diddy.
or
Yeah.
Donkey.
I think you picked Diddy. You were a Diddy guy through and through, if I remember correctly. Pause.
Why are we pausing?
Because we're talking about one separate Diddy. We're not talking about the other one.
Oh my gosh, where did I see that? They had to say something. I'd be like, pause. Oh, I think it was Jay Farrow.
Oh, Jay Farrow.
He was doing something.
Did you want that one?
No, you can go ahead and take it. I think it was doing impressions or something.
We were talking about beer, and we are of age to drink beer. You could look at us and be like, these guys aren't of age, or at least me. Brother, on the other hand, here.
Oh my gosh.
We've got a full goatee, a bird, and a fro when he grows it.
My fro. All right, back to the Dreamcast.
Yeah, solid. So that was a solid lineup coming out. Very solid. I believe Ready to Rumble was also on PlayStation or in 64, if I'm not mistaken.
Had it been PlayStation. Ready to Rumble.
Yeah, I think it was on both. Well, on
I
all
don't think
three.
it made it to 64. Let's see.
But yeah, I remember we played a lot of Sonic Adventure together. Well,
Mhm.
me watching a lot of you play it from the most part.
You know what? You're right. It was on a 64. Holy cow.
I remember playing it on all three systems because I remember one time we had played it on the Dreamcast, and then I know like Knockout Kings came out,
Mm,
and that was on PlayStation.
yes.
That was also on N64 too. And I remember you're like, "Oh, Ready to Rumble on PlayStation," and I remember I gave you shit for it because I was like, "Why would you rent this when we've already played it on the Dreamcast already?"
Yeah.
And it was, I'll tell you, it was not the
Yeah, they were.
greatest ran game for sure, but
Yeah, on the PlayStation, it was horrible. I was like,
yeah,
what the heck?
yeah, it was bad. I think that was kind of like the first time we actually seen a difference in video games,
Yes.
or at least for me.
It was. I was like, because it didn't feel right. It didn't. God, it's been so long. Probably didn't run as smooth.
No, it didn't. It didn't even look as smooth either.
No.
I was like, ugh. That's like it was like playing. And again, I love PS2 Madden. PS2 Madden will always be it. But if you compare PS2 Madden to original Xbox Madden, it is night and day. Original Xbox Madden looks so much better. But you know, we were PlayStation fanboys, so we'll
Yeah.
play the grainy graphics and win Super Bowls
Yeah.
as opposed to actually being able to see what we're playing with.
Uh,
Then eventually I was like, all right, yeah. Then the Xbox Madden is probably the best one.
mhm. I thought it was like that handful of games. Like certain, for me, PlayStation games kind of felt darker
Mm-hmm.
than Xbox, a little lighter,
Yeah.
more live.
Less saturation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, so we had Sonic Adventure. What were some other games we played? There was a remember there was
Crazy
a demo
Taxi.
disc? Yeah, Crazy Taxi.
A demo disc.
I just purchased it on Steam the other day.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
I just bought a Elite Series 2 controller. And so I was like, oh yeah, I can go ahead and play the games I can actually play on controller now instead of doing mouse and keyboard stuff.
Right.
And then I saw I had $50 on my account. I was like, man, I haven't even spent this yet. Let me go see what's up. So I bought Under Night, and then saw Crazy Taxi. It was only for like $4. So I was like, that's a no-brainer.
Yes.
That's a no-brainer. So I got that. So now I got like all the Sega selection on my Steam. I got Jet Set Radio. Also a great game. Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, and Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure. I just need Sonic Adventure 2 now.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably on Steam somewhere, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, what else did we play? We played Crazy Taxi.
Dreamcast. Did we? So I'm sure we played football games on there.
Yeah, we played NFL 2K. Well, the bad thing, we only have one controller. We had one controller to start out.
All right. Was this when they? No, because I think they started separating controllers during the N64. Or did they always include one?
They included one. Always included one.
I know there was a time period they started having the controller not included.
Oh, well, they're terrible for doing that.
Was it the Dreamcast? Maybe not.
No, I think most systems had a controller.
Why do I feel like there was a system that did not include a controller? I don't know, but
yeah, we only had one controller at that time. That was kind of stupid, but that's how things work.
Maybe it was the whole where they used to come with two controllers and they went down to one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm probably thinking of.
Because I remember the Super Nintendo one came with two. Sega Genesis only came with one.
Mm-hmm.
The original Nintendo came with one, I think. But I mean, I think you had to buy like a certain pack though. So I think they still sold separate ones that they came with two controllers and stuff like that. So I remember getting a Super Nintendo and we had two controllers that came with it. The N64 I know came with one because I remember we had gotten an extra controller.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 of us and only 2 controllers. I don't know what mom and dad were thinking. And then when they hear this podcast, they're going to be like, oh, what we were thinking was how the hell we're going to be paying our bills after all this stuff, you dirtbag. You better be satisfied. Yeah. I was. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I appreciate it. Love you both. They definitely took care of me this last week for sure. Mm-hmm. I was sick as a dog. But yeah, so we only had one controller at that time. So we were always watching each other play. Well, we were watching you play more or less than anything.
So speaking of the price, the Dreamcast was released with a $200 price tag.
Again, a lot cheaper than the Neo Geo, but much more superior than the Neo Geo.
They sold 9.13 million units. Mm-hmm. It was discontinued worldwide March 31st, 2001. So another console that did not really last long.
And you want to know why?
Was it a power struggle?
No, well, I mean, obviously that was probably the thing too. But the reason behind it is from the end of what Sega Genesis did, the whole life cycle of what Sega Saturn was going through in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not very much marketing. And then what Sega Saturn was going through, then this is where EA was like, I don't know. And EA was the sports thing at the time.
Yes.
And Sega was the sports system at that time. If you're not going to get the big hitters on there, and you've already put yourself in a hole in more than one way, and that was it. That was a wrap. But I'll tell you what, though, that system came out and it was way ahead of its time.
Oh yeah,
it was way ahead of its time.
I would agree.
That
It
system
had a little, I forgot what they called it. It was a device that went into the controller.
Oh, the VMU.
VMU, yes.
The VMU.
I think I had it for one. Well, I guess it also acted as a memory card. But it had a screen on it. I don't think it showed much info. But I thought that was cool.
Yeah. You can like take care of your little chos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I mean, again, way ahead of its time. I don't think the Dreamcast was appreciated for what it was.
No.
Every arcade game was like,
people probably still mad about the Saturn, so they're like, what is this?
Yeah. And every arcade that was ported over there was literally damn near the arcade game at this point. They came off the Naomi system, which most arcade games were doing at that time. And obviously it's a little bit less powerful just because it's a smaller chipset that you're using, but you just couldn't go wrong with the Dreamcast. You couldn't, but it was still competing with the PlayStation, still competing with the original Xbox at that point, because that came out 2 years later, but that was near the end of the cycle. Wait, no, came out a year later, 2 years, which was the end of the life cycle.
Speaking of life cycles, just to talk about the PS2, was in production from 2000 to 2013.
Jesus Christ.
13 years.
I mean, probably one of the best, I can think of the best-selling system out there.
Yes.
And PS2 was where it was at. I mean, there was like, what, 30 plus thousand games that came out? And those games were not going to finish. Well, no, I guess not finish, but I was just going to say, like, with the PS2, I mean, and I say this for the Dreamcast and the Saturn too. I believe, especially the Dreamcast, I believe the Dreamcast and PS2 in correlation of the two, and this is just my opinion, they had some love in those games. They did. They did. Look at another running back. Let them get rained on. They'll be all right. Just kidding. But yeah, I think that's the correlation of those two games. They had some love. Now, the original Xbox had some love in their games too. There was a lot of systems out there that had some great potentials. Untapped potential. But the Dreamcast, I believe, was one that just didn't get a fair shake. Same with the Saturn. But there was just too much stuff going on.
Yeah.
There was just too much stuff. Sega couldn't deal. Sega couldn't handle. They couldn't keep the title of being the sports console. And the rest was history. I think when they lost that title, it was over with. That's when we hit Earth. That's
Welcome to Earth.
Yeah, that's when we hit it. And I mean, the Dreamcast was where it's at, because I enjoyed that system. That was probably one of my favorites. Now that we're wrapping up the Dreamcast. I mean, there's really not much to talk about because it wasn't out for a while.
No,
but a lot of games they had a lot of ports from what games? The PS2 and I guess what was the other system that was out at that time? PS2, I think. No, was it the PS2 or the PS1?
99.
2000, 2001. Oh, the PS2 and the original Xbox, because I mean, they still made games. They just didn't have the protection for the systems.
Yes.
But yeah, they were still getting ports and everything like that, but a lot of the ports just weren't that good. Well, you had Dino Crisis that came over, one of the best like Capcom Resident Evil dinosaur horror games, and didn't play well at all. Didn't
Really?
look well either.
I never. Well, I probably did. Played in the arcade, but never on the consoles.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't look well. I mean, which you would think was something that's a bit more powerful that it would look well. It didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't at all. So it just lacked everywhere at that point. So I can see where that came from. But all that glazing, all that goddamn glazing, man, just ruined that system, ruined that company. And then now we know it as today, Sega, the software company. Still makes good games. Oh, I mean, look at Yakuza. Yakuza is a great series. They're still coming out with Sonic games. The last 3 Sonic games actually they came out with were actually pretty good. I don't count Sonic Forces, so anyone that's a big Sonic fan, I'm sorry. Sonic Forces, all I have to do is hold the boost button and I'm good.
You're good.
That's all I have to do in most of the levels there. You had Sonic Mania, which was really good, which again starts a Sonic Mania, if you did not know, was a whole new timeline.
Did not know. I stopped playing Sonic after, let's see. We have Sonic and Knuckles. What came after that?
That was actually technically Sonic 3.
Okay. Really? I thought they had Sonic.
Okay. So they came out with the Sonic Origins Plus collection just a couple summers ago, right?
No.
Okay, so they came out with that. So it's Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Knuckles, and then it was Sonic CD. So
okay.
So Sonic and Knuckles had its own separate cartridge, right?
Yeah.
If you remember that. I remember having that too.
Yeah.
And then you had Sonic 3. Well, Sonic 3 was actually Sonic and Knuckles. The only reason why they had a separate cartridge was because Sega had a sponsorship with ramen. Yeah, they had a sponsorship with ramen. So they split the game. Yeah, so I think they were waiting on the finalization of the sponsorship or something, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So they had finished the production of Sonic 3, and then they were ready to get that out, or they were ready to add the Sonic and Knuckles portion. And they were like, no, we need this out now, because now that we've got this finalized, we want this out for the sponsorship and everything. So it's not actually 2 separate games. It's actually one huge game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 It is, well, a little known fact you find out about stupid stuff like that.
Then they're like, let's just do this regularly.
Mm-hmm.
We have a game, chop it up, have it make no sense.
Right. Because it's like, wait a minute, what? But yeah, so that's that. But yeah, Sonic Mania is actually the start of the Neo timeline.
Okay.
And Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces actually go together.
Mm-hmm.
They actually came out not too far apart from one another. I think it was like maybe a couple months or something like that. But yeah, Sonic Mania, great.
Well, that's good to know.
Sonic Plus Origins, great. Sonic Frontiers, great.
Mm-hmm.
They're Sonic is stepping up their game. They're not as bad as they used to be. I think Sonic Forces was like the last bad one, but now you got Shadow Cross Generations now.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play Sonic Generations?
No, I did not.
Okay, so it's basically a remake of Sonic Generations, better graphics, blah blah blah. But they're just now adding a Shadow storyline to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. I like both Sonic and Shadow, but I do like that they're remaking that game, because that game was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Soundtrack, I mean, had soundtracks from all the other games and stuff like that. But it was a good game. It was a well built game for Sega. But I mean, yeah, now they're known as a software company. So,
right.
I mean, it is what it is. But now, what I was going to talk to you about earlier, and I was like, I'll just wait for the podcast. There's a third party Sega machine that is slated to come out soon. It is called the Super Sega.
Oh, I think I heard.
You heard about that?
Yeah,
Mr. RGT 80.
Yes, I think
85.
that's where I saw it from. But he stated they weren't sure if they could use the Super Sega portion or something.
No, they couldn't. The 32X, the 32X portion.
That's
you had to actually use the 32X itself somehow. But I mean, I don't know how it ties into the system itself, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. That's what it was. They left the 32X from them. That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, 32X again. That was all like the motion picture thing.
Yeah, it was just enhanced things, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't really or optimized things.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to be an artist to see that. You know,
there's a few games that I played. I didn't really notice a difference, but
so Yeah, now they got this whole thing coming out. What do you think about this Super Sega?
Oh, I was interested. I was trying to remember. Did it include all the games?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
don't think it does. You can they said that you can use the physical copies of whatever system that it's on there that you can use it with.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't come with games, but it will come with every port that you can use for all the Sega
Okay.
games. So like the SG-1000 and the Mega Drive, all the rest of that good stuff. So how I feel about it? No. No,
No,
I think it's just
not sold.
a money grab. I think it's not gonna be if it hits, it hits. And
Mm,
I've got no problems with that. I just don't think the quality is gonna be great.
I could
Uh,
see that.
you
Yeah.
got so many different components on this thing.
Especially with most of them being optimized to work on a CRT TV.
Mm-hmm.
But
This is something about if it being FPGA. I don't know what that actually means.
never heard of it.
Yeah, it
I'll
was
have
like
to
a
go down the rabbit hole for that
yeah.
one.
Let me look that up. But anyway, go ahead. I'm listening.
Oh no, I'm just curious. I just watched that portion of what he talked about the game. I didn't really dive into what the system was, but that you could just play all the games.
An FPGA. It's a field programmable gate array, which is so field programmable gate arrays are integrated circuits often sold off the shelf. They're referred as field programmable because they provide customers the ability to reconfigure the hardware to meet specific use case requirements after the manufacturing process.
Hmm.
I mean, I kind of have an idea, but I
Yeah.
don't at the same time.
It's making me think, what is it? Retro Trink? Retro Tink.
It's kind of one of those things where I guess, you know, FPGA,
Modernized
you can.
retro gaming. Yeah. A Retro Tink. Which one? The 4K one where it can optimize whatever console you plug into.
Mm-hmm.
It'll optimize it for whatever TV that you have. So it presents it in that true form.
Oh, so kind of like a converter in a sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That
This
makes
one has a
sense.
$750 price tag.
Yeah. Yeah, not doing that. But yeah. Super Sega? Nope. Hard no.
He's not sold.
Not sold. I mean, if I'm gonna do that, I might as well find something. I mean, even though basically it is a mod,
Yeah.
I'm gonna find something that, I can maybe get a Sega Saturn or something like that, use an SSD or an HDD, put the games on there, and then put like a little, I wouldn't say a chip, but I know you got to change the lens out, something like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
the Dreamcast is like that, where you change the lens out, you put something else in there, and it has an SD slot. You put the SD card in, and the SD card has all the games and the program and everything like
Really?
that.
For a Dreamcast?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. It's a real easy do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I've been trying to do. I was trying to look into seeing if PlayStation 2 has that, and it has something similar too. So I'm gonna probably try to look into doing something like that. So my library is getting big, but I mean, there's just some systems that I have. I'd just rather just get games like that
Right.
way for, you know what I mean, instead of having to track them all down.
Mm-hmm.
Like PS4, PS5, like I'm still buying a bunch of games for that, right? Because those are relevant things.
Yeah.
I don't have an original Xbox, but I have some original Xbox games. We all know that you can burn discs for that. So I mean, you probably find something or some little chip or something like and put it in there, solder it in, bam.
Call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, call me cheap, call me like, oh, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right. That's fine. I don't have to do it right, but I got to do it a way where it's going to be affordable for me.
Right.
You got all that money to go ahead and spend $30, $40 a pop, $20 a pop, $9.99 here, $5 there. Be my guest. I mean, I've been in that boat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just starting to get to a point where it's like,
Still this way. Call it a day.
yeah. I mean, there's one specific collection I want to get is a PlayStation collection, but I think right now with the modern systems at the moment, I think that's what I'm going to do. Everything else, I'm just going to probably try to find some way to, I wouldn't say pirate, but however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because I ain't calling you for dinner. So, but yeah, I think that'd probably be the best way to do it. Save money. Live
Sounds
better.
good.
Walmart.
The way to do it.
Well, yeah. Do you have any? I mean, the Super Sega. So, what was your take on that? Was that something you get?
I have to look at it again. Like I said, I was only introduced to it by RGT by watching this episode. God, so many plugs that we're giving out. We need to stop doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, shoot, like we don't even I need to get back on my streaming and I'll start plugging myself in there.
There you go.
But I mean, we give. I mean, I know we give out these
Yeah.
plugs, and we don't. I mean, obviously, we're not paid to do this by
Yeah.
any means, but
We're just,
people that do YouTube and stuff like that,
we respect what they do.
yeah, they're honest people. Like, they work hard. I like putting out there. I like putting their stuff out there. You can go ahead and check them out.
Check them out, because
I mean, you're checking us out, so I mean, obviously, we're doing something right.
Appreciate you, listeners. Thank you for sticking with us. But no, I'll go down, check it out again, because it perked my ears, made me want to look like, hey, what is this?
Yeah, no. Like, if you can't have everything on it,
we can't give you everything. Yeah. We can give you this.
We'll give you this. We'll let you play the Dreamcast, but the other inferior 32X, you'll just need a 32X for itself.
Yeah. It's like, well, then why am I supposed to get this then?
Right.
Like, you saying this is an all-encompassing little thing that I need to use. Now, I understand, right? But I'm not going to have it's not Burger King. I can't have everything my way. I can't. But I mean, you're going to advertise this, but then all of a sudden you just put this disclaimer like, oh, this won't work. You'll have to have its own thing. But everything else does.
Right.
I mean.
Well, that's how I felt about College Football 25. But.
Well, what do you mean?
Oh, there were just certain things that they weren't including that 2014 had. So.
Oh, I mean.
That's a different story.
Yeah, that is a different story. But. Yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yes. But thank you guys for listening. Be on the lookout for the next episode. And again, thank you for listening to us talk about Sega Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, and see you guys on the next episode. Deuces.